Hey guys, I'm back with another video. I hope that you guys enjoyed that song. Let's quickly take a look at what's going on Cubase. So for the drums, I'm using the GGD P4 kit on this one. So if you've been following me so far, you probably know that the rhythm section has always been GGD and punk bass. I mean, the bass kind of changes to either Euro bass or Gin bass, but it's still VST bass by Submission Audio. It helps put everything together so quickly and so easily, and you can just have mix ready tones within 10-15 minutes, if that even, right? So I'm basically using the Submission Audio punk bass going into the Neural DSP Parallax. So this is my go-to chain for bass at the moment. I am also processing it using another secret plugin that I'm going to be talking about in one of the coming videos. For the guitars, we are using the Neural DSP Quad Cortex, but before that I've plugged in my precision drive. So the precision drive going into the Neural DSP Quad Cortex, exactly like last week. The chain ideally is going to remain the same for the most part. So if you guys have any suggestions on what kind of things you want me to talk about, please let me know in the comments. I would love to go over it, because most of these Jam of the Week songs are ideally going to have the same workflow or the same template. So you might kind of get bored after a while. So please let me know if you have any suggestions at all. Apart from that, for the lead guitar stuff, it's the same thing. I have the precision drive going into the Neural DSP Quad Cortex, just having a little more delay and reverb in the patch. That's about it. Nothing fancy going on there. And there are again interesting things going on as far as the synths are concerned. I always love playing around with synths. In fact, one of the things that you can try if you feel like you're in a creative block is try to write the song from a different approach completely. So what I mean by that is, usually if you've always been writing guitar first and then drums next and last bass, and maybe you do some synth work in the end, maybe this time you can try doing drums first and then bass next and then synths, and then probably go into the guitar parts. That will make you write music completely differently. So that's ideally what happened over here. So I did not touch the guitar until the rhythm section was completely done and the synths were completely done. So that way I could just focus on playing guitars to fill up the spaces, and that way I could play more musical stuff than creating some crazy riffs all the time and playing something there. So that's ideally what led to creating this line. So that's ideally what led to creating a solo line, or like a vocal line on a lead guitar. And one of the things I get asked quite often is, do you double track your lead guitars? So for me, how I go about it is, depending on the kind of melody that I'm playing, if I feel like it's a vocal kind of a melody, I feel like having a center lead guitar and having a left and right playing the same thing kind of adds more width and more power to the melody line. So that's what I do. Of course, I don't do it all the time. If it makes sense to the melody, then there are no rules, right? You can kind of do whatever you want. So that's what's going on here. I think the entire lead section over here is been one center track, and then there's left and right also playing the same thing. So it just adds so much more power to it. The thing, of course, when doing such a thing is you have to watch out is with the timing. You have to try to play as tight as possible, and that's ideally what is going to make it sound like one, and it's going to make it gel together. If it's too different in terms of the timing, especially when you end on a note or something like that, it's probably not going to sound that great, unless it's like an aesthetic thing that you're kind of going for. Otherwise, try to play it as tight as possible, especially when you're playing metal or something like that. I found that playing super tightly at the source kind of gets you more than halfway there. That makes sense. Anyway, so okay, so now let's go on to Logic and see what processing is going on under the hood there. So here we are in Logic. So you will find like a similar thing happening exactly like the previous week, and probably the previous week, and then the weeks that are going to come by. Okay, one of the things that I always get asked is, how do you come up with stuff so quickly? So the answer to that is very simple. It's using templates. So you can kind of create a template and save it and use the same kind of routing and same kind of plugins loaded up already. Just makes your life so much more simpler, and you don't have to waste time pretty much creating these buses every single time, loading the plugins and all of that. That's going to probably take you a lot of time. So if you have to kind of mix a song from scratch every single time, then it's going to take a lot of time. Having templates that get you at least halfway there or more than that is going to help, especially if you have the same kind of sources more or less. Like if I'm using the same drums, if you're using the same guitar tones or very similar guitar tones, then you don't really have to do much when you change the song. You ideally just have to adjust your template to make it work for that particular song. So that's ideally how I go about mixing stuff. That's how I'm able to create stuff quickly. So if you haven't taken the time to create a template, I highly recommend doing that. So in fact, I have two separate templates, one for writing, that's the composition part of things. I do that on Cubase, so I have a template for songwriting specifically on Cubase. I have my drums already loaded up, I have Submission Audio bass loaded up already, and then I have a few audio tracks already loaded up, and synths that I think might use all the time is already loaded up just in case I'm going to use that. So having this saves at least like 3 or 4 minutes, because you're just kind of starting off and you're ready to go. So it's all about making things work as quickly as possible. So that helps you save a lot of time and also get you in that zone very quickly. So let's take a look at what's going on. So as far as the drums is concerned, pretty straightforward stuff, exactly like last week. I don't think there's a point in me explaining this template, but there is something interesting that I did in this particular song that I could probably share, which is trying to make this rhythm guitar sound a little more wider. I mean, it's just chords, chunky chords, but I felt like this guitar was just too centered and I wanted it to kind of sound wider. So instead of using artificial widening plugins like stereo widener or something like that, what I tried doing was this particular trick. I'm pretty sure I picked it from somewhere on the internet, I'm not sure where, but ideally what's going on here is the left and right channels. I'm just boosting different places on the EQ. So the left is actually boosted 1.5 dB at around 7K, and the right channel is boosted at around 1.5 dB at 3700K. So ideally what's going on here is not too big of a boost, but just kind of creating a little difference between the left and right channels can often make your guitar tracks sound a lot more wider. So if you've never tried that trick, feel free to try it out and let me know how that goes for you. Now, of course, keep in mind every mix is different and you have to see if it works, so don't use this as a template on every mix, but maybe if something feels lifeless, or if you want to make something sound a little more exciting, then probably that's something that you could have a go at. Now, one thing that I have been doing is using this particular plugin called Escalator from Black Salt Audio. This plugin and the other plugin is called Low Control, which I've used on bass. These have become my favorite plugins in the past 2 weeks. I've been using it pretty much on every single thing that's been out there. You can use it on rhythm guitar, you can use it on snare drum, you can use it on a drum bus. If you want to make something sound fatter, go for Escalator. It's just going to make your life so much more easier as well. So for the bass, ideally I exported it out from the Cubase project with the parallax on. I just added some saturation and energy from the Escalator plugin, just fattens up the bass a little bit. Some decapitator to ideally just add some more gain, saturation. Then this time what I have added is my new favorite plugin, which is Low Control from Black Salt Audio. I am going to be doing a separate video on this particular plugin and their Escalator plugin next week, so stay tuned on that. So apart from that, it's going through my standard mix bus settings, which is ideally some saturation, some EQ and compression. So for compression, I'm using the Cytomic, the glue for the mix bus compression. This is something new that I've been doing. It's ideally an SSL style compressor, but it also has the high pass function where you can just kind of make it compress in such a way that you don't affect the low end. So the low end is just kept intact that way, and you just compress the snare and all the other stuff that's there. So it just kind of brings everything together and glues stuff together. And as usual, I'm kind of using flatline to bring up the volume. I'm also using a little bit of ozone. One thing about mastering in general is that you can use a clipper and then you can use a limiter like the ozone to kind of just work in conjunction with each other, just to give a little more bite and a difference in sound. Like I have noticed that when I use a clipper first and then when I use a limiter later on and just balance out the volumes between them, blend them both, I get a different result in a way. It sounds good. So if it sounds good, you can just kind of throw it in there and go about your day. Okay guys, so thanks so much for checking out that video. Again, hope that you got something useful from this. Please feel free to let me know anything that you want me to make a video on. My template is pretty much the same all the time, so you're probably going to be seeing the same thing. So let's try to make some interesting stuff. Please let me know your suggestions and comments. Stay safe and keep making music. Bye bye.